Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and I am so excited for this one. Get your tinfoil hats on, folks. I'm going to give you my theory on why the Russians were over Swedish nuclear power plants a month before the invasion of Ukraine. This one really bothered me. Now, I don't have any secret information, but I believe once I start to break this down and you hear my theory, it's going to blow your minds. And if you think I'm crazy, you can tell me that in the comments as well. But what really bothered me, when everybody was talking about this incident that happened, now it hasn't been confirmed that it's Russian drones, but everybody knows at this point that it was Russia. But everybody was talking about it in the sense when I was talking to people that, Russia likes to bully bordering countries, Russia likes to bully Sweden, and they were just trying to show their might here and just try to test vulnerabilities. This is what I constantly heard. But see, it just didn't make sense to me. It really bothered me up here. I started thinking about it and I said, no, that doesn't make sense. There's something with the nuclear power plants. It was all the same time. It was timed the same time. Because if they did it at one and then try to do it at other ones, maybe security would be higher. So I really felt like this was a timed effort. So for us to get into why I think this is the case, we actually got to go back all the way to World War II. See, Sweden was virtually untouched during World War II. They kind of played both sides. They helped the Allies, but they also let the Germans move through freely. Because of this, they had a lot of resources after the war to develop technologies where everybody else is rebuilding. Sweden was able to get through unscathed. Now, Sweden didn't have a strong military at the time either that could probably realistically fight the Germans. After the war, Sweden looked at Russia as the next serious threat. Now, it makes a lot of sense because in 1939, Russia invaded Finland and we had the Winter War. What's crazy, actually, is that the Winter War has so many parallels to the war in Ukraine right now. For example, the Finnish were really outnumbered. They barely even had an air force at all, I think. They used the Russians had low morale and they just got obliterated. 200,000 Russians died. And the Russians would abandon tanks and equipment, and the Finnish would then take that and use that against the Russians, and we see that happening in Ukraine as well. So it makes 100% sense that Sweden really saw Russia as a threat. So after the 1950s, Sweden really started to build up their military. While that was happening, they also had another thought. They thought, if we're going to be a neutral country, we're going to have to find a way to protect ourselves if we are not in NATO. And what they decided was, it would be a really good idea to develop a nuclear bomb only for defense purposes. Because once you have a nuclear bomb, that's pretty much a you can't invade me card. We see that now with countries like North Korea. It's a way of protection. It gives you security in that sense, even if you don't have strong conventional forces. So during the 1950s, they started to develop the nuclear weapon. They got so close to developing this nuclear weapon, they were ready for pretty much underground testing. They just needed to assemble the weapon. But the government was the only thing that stood in the way. And in the 1970s, I believe 1972, they decided that they were going to dismantle their nuclear project, that Sweden was going to be a country that didn't use nuclear weapons. But here's the thing. They were scarily close. And nobody 100% really knows what happened once they dismantled. Like, let's think about this for a second. So you take all this time and effort to build a nuclear weapon, and then you stop. Do you get rid of everything? Do you have the research, you have the materials, do you keep some things in case things change and you want to develop a nuclear weapon? So stick with me here for a second. Let's say Sweden, hypothetically again, decided to save that nuclear material so they could make a weapon, or they developed some of these weapons in secret. You would need to maybe hide these weapons somewhere because nuclear warheads do give off some form of radiation that can be measured. It's estimated that like today's technology and today's drones would possibly be able to detect nuclear warheads. If you were going to hide nuclear weapons and you were Sweden, or just nuclear materials, a nuclear power plant would be a great place to do this. And it's also a place where you could produce weapons for making nuclear weapons. Now, a nuclear power plant and a nuclear bomb aren't that far apart from one another. Think of a nuclear reactor or a nuclear power plant as a very slow nuclear bomb. So if you were going to hide a nuclear weapon in a power plant, in a nuclear power plant facility or a nuclear facility, it would be easier to hide in that sense due to the radiation already happening. So it is my belief that Russia knew that when they were invading Ukraine, there was going to possibly consequences, that possibly Finland and Sweden would join NATO. So I believe the Russians flew these drones over these nuclear power plants all at the same time because they were looking for any type of unique radiation signal that just seemed a little bit off from a normal nuclear power plant because they wanted to see what Sweden's nuclear capabilities were if they could develop a nuclear weapon or how far they were. This is my theory. The Russians weren't just here bullying us. They were trying to figure out what Sweden is up to. And it's funny because when I look back in my research, the Russians throughout history never really believed that Sweden got rid of all their nuclear technology. Here's one other thing I will say. As far as I understand, the Swedes still had the capability. If they hypothetically had nuclear weapons, they have the perfect delivery system for them. They could use their submarines. It's not that crazy. And I'll tell you what, it's interesting to me because looking back, I'm sure a lot of Swedes nowadays would be happy if they did have a nuclear weapon. So I can't say for sure that Sweden has one or doesn't have one, but I'll tell you right now, if they did have one, now would be the perfect time to tell everybody, or now would be the perfect time to get the ball rolling, because if they had a weapon, they wouldn't need to be in NATO, and they wouldn't be in this situation they're in currently. So this is my theory. I'm very interested to hear what everybody else thinks. I hope you enjoyed this one. So I will see you guys in the next video. Hej då!